I can't believe you. You really couldn't have done that with a horse.
Husband, please listen to me. I can explain.
Get out of here, quick.
My love, please listen to me.
I won't listen to someone who makes such a mess with a horse.
No, seriously, it's not like that.
He's just a horse. I'm disgusted with you.
Because of a moment of pleasure I had with this horse, my husband and I are now at the point of separation. My husband is still very angry with me because of all this horse trouble and, frankly, he hasn't gotten over it yet. But I must say, my encounter with that horse was something else. One day as I was walking by the stream, I noticed this magnificent horse grazing in a nearby field. I had never seen such a bright coat and big eyes, so I walked to the fence to take a closer look. As I got closer, I felt the horse inviting me to come closer, as if it wanted to make contact. Feeling a little braver, I leaned over the fence, reached out and stroked him gently. The coat was incredibly smooth and the horse seemed to be resting there, taking attention. I had never been in the presence of such a beautiful animal before. I was really impressed by his size and strength. As I was admiring him, I saw something swaying that I didn't believe was part of his anatomy. Curious, I decided to explore a little more, ran my hands to the side and moved toward the bottom when I finally touched what I thought was the situation. I couldn't stop marveling at the difference between the soft exterior and the hard interior. At first, I wasn't quite sure what to expect, but as soon as I got my hands on it, my curiosity kicked in. As I looked at it, I saw a strong part of it begin to expand and I could feel something moving. Surprisingly, the inner tube began to squeeze through the smooth and furry outer layer, and I was shocked and impressed when it grew right in front of me, and more than a foot at a time as it looked inside. I was very surprised at it. As I slowly stroked its length, the horse emerged, and I nodded appreciatively and made a soft sound of satisfaction. My curiosity got the better of me and trusted me to take a closer look at the horse's body, something I had never seen before on closer inspection. I noticed a well-defined sperm, much larger than I had imagined, hanging from the ground. I reached out to touch them, feeling their soft tissue collapse down and towards me. At that moment, I was reminded of water and got curious about what was inside. Out of nowhere, a thick, clear, syrupy liquid began to drip off from the tip. What I was not sure of, but very keen on finding out. The liquid dribbled and formed small pools on the ground, and my wander around was making this shiny, sticky stuff looking slightly like honey and rendering the ground beneath us ever so slippery. The horse was obviously enjoying the attention. He would shake his head and make some soft, comforting noises, while his large, expressive eyes seemed to beckon me closer. I felt an overwhelming urge to hold him, to feel the presence of something immediately beneath my hands. This time, though, the horses were enormous. Wrapping a hand around them became a challenge. I was taken aback by its size. At that moment, it hit me. I craved a taste. I leaned in, wanting to enjoy it all at once, but there was simply too much to manage. It was so delightful that I felt an intense desire. Despite knowing it was unlikely, this bizarre flavor seemed to pour directly into my mouth, and I found myself helplessly savoring it. The taste was incredible, reminiscent of fruit. What can I say? I just kept wanting more. I was clearly pushing my boundaries while trying to contain my excitement. Yet, I needed to swallow to prevent any mishaps. This flavor brought apples to mind, making it even harder to resist since I genuinely enjoy that taste. It was an odd sensation that was somehow pleasurable at the same time. Then, unexpectedly, the size of the horse appeared to grow even larger. Yes, even larger. I was left in disbelief, trying to comprehend how it expanded like that. It felt almost dreamlike. With its expansion, I sensed pressure against my lips, but I went along with it. Suddenly, the horse began to pour a steady stream of liquid into my mouth, causing me to forget everything else. Everything changed in an instant. I found myself struggling to keep up. A few words escaped me. The scene was chaotic, yet the flavor was so wonderful that I didn't mind the inconvenience. As the liquid flowed out, I attempted to gulp down as much as possible, but it was overwhelming. The more I tried to drink, the more it splattered everywhere, leaving me damp and sticky. It was a blend of humor and romance, something entirely new for me. I was having a fantastic time, but all at once, the heat intensified. My knees shook beneath me, and I sank down, not entirely pleased with the horse's output, leaning against it for support. That's when the real splashing began, drenching me in fluid that struck my face and hair. The cool droplets felt refreshingly invigorating. It was akin to a mini water fight, and I cherished every moment of it. I couldn't stop laughing while trying to wipe the liquid off my face, but it just kept coming. By the end of the horses episode, I glanced down and realized I was a complete mess. My hair was drenched and sticking out in every direction, and my clothes were soaked. Rather than feeling embarrassed, I laughed even harder, as embracing the absurdity of the moment felt most fitting. It was one of those unforgettable experiences, filled with pure, carefree joy. Still wet, I got up and gave the horse an affectionate pat, saying, "Good boy, grateful, such an enjoyable day." Yet, that cheerful moment quickly transformed into something completely unexpected. I was completely blindsided when my husband witnessed everything happening. The realization struck me hard, leaving me feeling truly ashamed. I was so immersed in the happiness of being with the horse that I lost track of how much time I was supposed to spend with him. The disappointment etched on my husband's face was unmistakable, and with each passing moment, my heart sank further, rendering me speechless. All I wanted was to clarify my actions, but the knot in my stomach made it feel impossible. It was surreal to witness his sadness. I had never seen him this angry before, and it genuinely frightened me. "How can you explain this?" he yelled, his voice a blend of frustration and confusion echoing in my mind. I desperately searched for the right words to calm him, but the weight of my mistake felt like an overwhelming burden, making it increasingly difficult to voice my feelings. I wished I could rewind time and correct everything, but that option no longer existed. As he continued to shout, I felt immobilized. The joy I had just experienced was fading into a distant memory. I could only hope he would hear me out so he could mend what was broken, but the guilt and regret drained me. I tried to express how important this was to me, longing for his forgiveness for my error. "Please, just listen to me," I pleaded softly. "I want you to understand." But fear still gripped me. I hardly understood why he was so hurt, and I wasn't sure if there was anything I could say to heal the rift between us. "Pull away," he shouted, pushing me back with such force that I nearly stumbled. The anger in his voice pierced my heart. Those words cut deep. I wanted to reach out and explain, but it felt as if an impenetrable wall had risen between us. "You're disgusting," he repeated. "I never thought he'd say something like that," she continued, her voice breaking like fragile ice. I instinctively reached out in regret, but he moved away. The disappointment on his face was more painful than anything, making me feel even more isolated. I wished I could turn back time, but I knew it wouldn't be easy. Frustrated, I leaned in and gently held his face, trying to kiss him, hoping it would help us reconnect. If only for a moment. It seemed to work, but the rage in his eyes still simmered. There was a shift, despite our lips touching. I sensed the distance growing. "Just stay away from me," he said. He spat those words, and at that moment, everything around me seemed to fade away. The anguish in his voice was so overwhelming that I hardly recognized him anymore. My heart sank as soon as I realized that the man I loved now thought of himself as humiliated for having loved me, and at that moment, I knew there was nothing I could do to heal the pain. "Why did you do this to me?" His voice trembled, and I could see tears in his eyes. The sight of him crying was, in fact, more painful for me than facing his wrath. I wished to say something to somehow ease the atmosphere, but all I could say was, "I am really sorry," as I barely managed to hold my voice steady. Wiping his tears off, he continued, "Am I really not enough for you?" The question both stunned and shocked me. Silence ensued, a silence I realized deep down would be deafening. He was right. What was I thinking? How could I have made such a mistake? A question left words unspoken, but I knew deep down that I was drowning in guilt, my mind racing to get away from this mess, desperately trying out all methods, but found nothing. The pain in her eyes then felt like a knife, piercing deep at my heart, and for some reason, I really wanted to keep her from getting hurt. Now I seemed to have crossed that line that was always too hard to come back from. He turned around to avoid meeting my eyes, and in that moment I felt as if I had lost him forever. "I never thought he would do this," he muttered, disbelief in his voice. "I don't recognize you anymore," he added, and those words affected me more than anything else. I would like to express my condolences, but he retreated, causing more distance between us. "Please let me explain. I beg you." But inside I knew that no words could really fix it. He shook his head, his face a mixture of anger and sadness. "Stop trusting me. You expect things to happen. What will happen after this?" he asked in a shaky voice. "Nutcom installed. All I had done was destroy something precious that could never be repaired." Tears streamed down my cheeks, but the damage cannot be removed. We stood in silence that seemed to last forever. No one knows what to say. The air was filled with everything we couldn't express. He finally broke the silence. His tone was cautious and submissive. "I need time," he whispered. I can't be by your side right now." With these words, he turned around and left me in the mess I had created. I'm lying on the floor, his knees hit hard as tears streamed down his cheeks. I was overwhelmed with my emotions. The horse stood quietly near me, not knowing how to annoy me, which made me feel even more guilty. I was so shocked at how low and pure I was. Every hiccup was a painful reminder of the heavy weight that my decisions were hanging on me, making it super difficult to exercise my breath-holding talent. I thought that I had broken everything, and with every tear rolling down from my eyes, my self-hatred grew even greater. How could I have been so reckless and selfish? My fists clenched tightly, and before I could figure out what was happening, I was beating the ground over and over, hoping that the physical pain would distract me from the emotional turmoil. My hands hurt because of hard contact with the cruel earth, but that pain was nothing near the suffering in me. Why did I do this? I cried. It came out of a voice quivering with original emotions. I would turn back time to correct the horrendous error I made. The horse stood there, with kind eyes, all innocent for the havoc he had added to my life, yet deeper my regret. I looked at her, and when I thought of how my husband was going to react, my stomach began twisting. He will never forgive me this. I feel like I'm being dragged under an ocean of despair and constantly wonder if I'll ever be able to forgive myself. Everything feels like it's falling apart, and I feel utterly incapable of fixing it. I sat there, thinking. My tears wouldn't dry, and every hiccup reminded me of the heavyweight memories upon me. Watching the sun slowly sink below the horizon, I felt dirty and sore on my hands, and my body was totally worn out from crying, but I couldn't stop. I was overwhelmed with feelings of loneliness and brokenness, and the feeling of guilt enveloped me like a sultry blanket. Deep down, I knew no tears could change what happened. It happened, and I had to face the consequences. In that moment of deep sadness, I realized I needed to make a promise to myself. Taking a deep breath, I wiped my tears with my hand and swore in a trembling voice that never again would I fall into that dark place. I knew it wasn't going to be easy. Of course, there would be times that I would be seduced, especially when I see a horse or anything that would remind me of that fateful day. But I promised I would be strong, actively avoiding situations that might lead me to make another reckless decision. I was determined to change my life, and I was going to start by staying away from places that could drag me to make another bad choice. I wanted to show my husband that I was determined to change, that I could be the wife he deserved me, that my efforts would show him how sincere I really was. And a wave of confidence came over me as I set that out, and my heart wants to forgive me. I took one last look at my horse and said softly, hoping he felt the need to move on. I walked out of the restaurant with a heavy heart, ready to start again. My husband was my priority, and I was ready to do anything to improve our relationship. I knew that the change would not happen overnight, but I was happy to face the challenges ahead and strive for a brighter future. Though he was no longer with me, a spark of hope ignited in me. I know that when he returns, he will find a changed woman, someone who left the past behind and made wise choices. I promised myself I would never act so thoughtlessly again, especially when it came